Welcome, our fellow lovers of love, and thank you for joining us on yet another excursion through the stream of consciousness down the river of tranquility to fill the lake of life with love.
And good evening, our fellow lovers of love. Thank you for joining us on our new version, I guess, or revamped versions of Late Night Love. So join us here for our about a half-hour discussion, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending upon how much we blather and how much you participate. So you can always find us at latenighlove.us. We'll get this up on the thing eventually. I had it here a second ago, and now I've lost it because, yes, I'm a professional. Oh, there it goes. You can go latenighlove.us, and you can always find us on our group at Locals, where we will have Locals-only content. It's a free group for now, so, join while it is. We will always have some free content at Locals. There will be behind-the-scenes kind of stuff behind the paywall. We'll never put this content behind a paywall. Some of it may come out like a couple days, because we're going to plan on recording our second show on Tuesdays, broadcast those on Thursdays, and those may eventually go behind a small paywall, but that's in the future. That's not anything to worry about for now. But join us over at Locals, Late Night Love, Locals/Late Night Love. God, I butchered my interests. I actually should probably write these things down at this point. We need a producer to smash me upside the head with the knuckles. Maybe that's something we'll get out of our new ventures. Anyway, just talking about new ventures, we've got an interesting show tonight.
Yes, we do.
And I almost apologize for the almost clickbaity title of the show.
Well, it's a very interesting article. It had some points that I wanted to talk about. It's a very interesting subject.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting subject, and we have to point out that we're talking about a relatively small group of people in the cuckolding community that it can be successful for, right? You're not talking. It's not something that normal people would succeed at. You're talking about two people who've found I guess in this case 3 people who have found
or more
who have found a mutual proclivities, where their proclivities fit together like a puzzle pieces, and personally, anybody who finds kind of success in whatever the relationship style is, it's not going to get judgment from me. As long as everybody's not just consenting. I mean, we're not talking about people who just consented to give something a try and see where it goes. We're talking about people who have actually worked through it, made sure it's a proper decision for them. It's hard to make something like that successful. And so if you're generally successful, for those handful of people who actually are, I'm not going to necessarily say should be applauded, but, shouldn't be judged. Correct?
It's a lot of work. It's got to be a lot of work. Never did it myself.
It's a lot of work, and a lot of internal work, self-work. You have to...
Oh, yeah.
You've got to know who you are and know what you are and know what you want in life. And so it's easy to kind of superficially make fun of, right? A lot of people do. They kind of superficially make fun of it. But, how many of us have successful relationships, successful sexual relationships? It's actually a small amount of people, relatively speaking. And so, especially if they're kind of outside the norm, anybody who lives outside the norm, who has sexual proclivities outside the norm and can find somebody whose sexual proclivities match that, it's an amazing actual thing. So
it's a wonderful world.
Diversity is a blessing, right? And so, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it is so that we can, let's end the judgment about it. It's funny. It's fun and games to say, I wouldn't want to do that. I would never do that. Okay, great. No one's really asking you to, or if someone does, you can say no. But how do you say no? We've got some tips. We've got some discussion about that later, about how do you say no and how do you have the discussion. We've got, if you go to latenightlive.us, we have links to some articles about how to deal with that. But you wanted to have some points on the article you wanted to talk about. You said,
Which one?
the cuckolding one.
The cuckolding, yes. It's becoming apparently a little more normalized. It's becoming more. I found it interesting that in the homosexual community, now that there are long-term relationships, marriages, their cuckolding is starting to becoming, the counselors are hearing more about it, and people who are coming to them to work through these issues in making this a lifestyle.
Well, it actually kind of makes sense. You're talking about people who are willing to live outside the social norms and willing to push against the pressures of the social norms. So why wouldn't they push against those pressures as well? And they exist in as much as in a non-straight relationship, non-hetero relationship, as they do in a the relationships are no different fundamentally. The pressures are are the same fundamentally between when any two human beings react, right? Whether it's whatever the genders are involved, it doesn't really matter. It's just so it doesn't actually that doesn't surprise me at all. My surprise would actually, if I was to act surprised, it would be the other way around. It's that you would have already seen it in the homosexual relationships, the non-straight relationships, and you're just now starting to become normalized so in a sense that surprises me a bit, that it's taken this long to start showing up. But shows you how much.
Well, the counselors said that they're just seeing they're seeing more people come to them.
Yeah, but I would have thought that the homosexual community would have been the first ones to show up in the counselings, and then the straight community. But I guess maybe it is. Maybe there are more marriage counsel, more non-traditional marriages are starting to hit counselings now, and that's what the actual issue is. What you're seeing is the more non-traditional marriages are starting to hit the counselors, and so now they're starting to kind of report these things are popping up. Maybe that's what it is. So interesting. It's interesting to kind of wonder what it is, but it's also interesting to know that this is hardly a rare thing. While it's a small percentage, but if 1% of the people, 1% of 310 million people is a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. And there's nothing new under the sun. In the article, it was reporting like back in the 13th century.
Oh, yeah.
Men being unsure of who the father of their children were.
Well, we can look back at the ancient writings from Egypt, right? From ancient Egypt, when the people who built the pyramids, they had the right to find writings on tablets, and they're complaining about the same thing: unfaithful wives, and why does he allow his wife to go run around with other men? Well, maybe he doesn't mind so much, right? The relationships are relationships. There's no, like you said, there's no different under the sun, whether it was today or 4,000 years ago. You get humans together in bunches, and people with proclivities find each other. Didn't need the internet back in ancient Egypt.
Just bumping into each other.
They somehow managed to figure it out back then too. So So what else? Anything else on that one?
Not that I can really think of.
Oh.
That you really gotta think this through, though. You're gonna be seeing your partner with another man, but another thing,
Or with another person.
It does say on here that it's not cuckolding if there isn't an element of humiliation, degradation, or denial.
Well, some people like the humiliation, degradation thing in its place, right? Maybe it's a stress relief, a chance to turn off the rest of the stressful world. Who knows? The psychological reasonings for that vary. It's hardly unique. There's lots of techniques people use to feel that way. But it doesn't mean they want it elsewhere, right? Maybe they want to feel it just there. Who knows what the trigger was? Who knows what the, if you're Freud, you go back to your childhood. Who knows what it is, and who cares what it is? Ultimately, if that's what someone, I don't like the word needs, because
desires.
Yeah, that's someone's desire. And some desires are stronger than others, right? Some people have a stronger need to fulfill that desire than others do.
Yes.
Some people, live life, they kind of have to live life with their sexuality on their sleeve. Other people, hey, it'd be fun, but, if I don't, I don't. Right? And other people can't even imagine wanting to, it just can't cross their mind, exiting the normal boundaries of what's normal, they can't fathom it. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. As long as you find your partner that's kind of comfortable with it as well. As long as you're open about it, and as long as you kind of deal with it. It's perfectly fine if two people who want to, proverbial stay in the missionary position their whole life, stay in the missionary position for whole life. It ain't none of everybody else's business, right? As much as if people want to involve themselves in sexual, extracurricular sexual play, shall we call it, to use a good euphemism, then it's none of our business, is right. Even just none of our business, even if it does long-term harm the relationship, it's still none of our freaking business.
It's none of our business. What does it matter to me?
Yeah.
What effect does it have on my life? None at all.
Yeah, as if the rest of us haven't harmed our relationships in many hundreds of other ways, right? It's hardly the worst. As long as everybody's open and honest and continues the dialogue, you're probably, some of these people may have better fundamental relationship skills than the rest of us do. And what breaks them up may have nothing to do with their sexual proclivities. Maybe the same stresses that everybody else does, finances, and life changes, and we all grow apart sometimes. Some people want to grow one way, some people want to grow another way. They grow apart. Maybe these people have a better chance of not growing apart because they're continually.
Well, that goes towards their advice that they give. They said if you're going to decide to move forward, it's important to take baby steps. The reality of watching your spouse having sex with someone else is often very different from the fantasy. It can dredge up powerful emotions, so take baby steps and keep talking and communicating, people.
Yeah. Well, and understand, you're going to have to be prepared for that. If it doesn't give you the thrill that you think it does, you're going to have to be, you're both going to have to be prepared for dealing with the after effects of that. You're going to have to be prepared for but you got to suck it up, buttercup. You can't hold it against the other person. You can say, look, I just don't want to engage this anymore. You always have that right, as a human being. But you can't hold it against them. If you asked for it, they complied. You didn't enjoy it, and they did. That's you. And you have to be prepared for that. And that's the thing that a lot of people can't deal with, is they can't mentally prepare themselves for that. And so, whatever your proclivities are, be open and ready to deal with them. All right. And if you ever want to send us questions or comments, you can send us at love@latenightLove.us. We'd love to discuss them on the air. Also, you can leave a comment, and we can we'll answer it live if you get the chance to do so. So we also had some discussions about what to do if you have. There was a couple of articles in kind of doing the research for the show, and my phone has gone wonky on me. And how do you deal with incompatible? We talk about people who are compatible, right? Who's found a way to have their sexualities compatible. But what if you don't? What if you're someone who has sexual desires that the other person just can't participate in, or find some way to engage you with? and find some way to reconcile it. You know, what do you do? How do you move forward?
Well, I like how one of the articles that she posted, the approach is you take the approach like you would any other incompatibility. Financial incompatibility, child rearing incompatibility, and you go at it with a team effort.
Mm-hmm.
I liked but I guess basically you would have to make a choice. Either you're gonna decide to not participate in some things, or else your partner would let you participate with other people in those types of things.
Yeah, and part of our problem with human beings is these things are so difficult to discuss because we're so afraid of rejection. And especially if it's the rejection from the person you love and you have some oddball sexual fantasy that you want to take part in every 10 years or 5 years or what it is. If you lived in a perfect world, maybe you don't want to participate in it all the time, but every now and again, you know, you wouldn't necessarily mind, but you don't want to risk your relationship. You don't want to risk the love you have, so you bury it. You never even talk about it because, it is what it is. It's something maybe you're even embarrassed about it, or, maybe we've talked about, wanting to be humiliated and degraded in some way, and you just don't want to bring that up with your partner because it's embarrassing. Who wants to talk? Who wants to tell the person they love that that's what they like? And maybe you don't like having that power structure in your relationship.
Maybe it's just a fantasy.
Because, well, there is dangers.
Or you wonder, what would it be like? Yeah, there are dangers.
Well, there is dangers let's say power relationships in your sexuality is something that you want to explore in your sexuality, but you don't want to take the risk of it bleeding over into your personal life. Maybe you've had some experience, and that's why you feel that way. Maybe that, okay, I can't. It's easier for me to say, just to not do it, than it is to take the risk of having, it bleed over. Because maybe it sounds like fun a time or two, but how these things happen as human beings tend to do. One person gets more involved in it than the other. And so you've got this weird, so now you have what was a fun power dynamic game is now become a power dynamic lifestyle, and that's not what you wanted. You just wanted to have a fun game. How do you do that in a long-term relationship without it souring the long-term relationship? Don't know. So maybe you don't want to take the risk. So what do you do? Do you do nothing? Do you bury it? Or do you have some long-term discussion about it? Or do you,
Well, there's a lot of options. I read in Penthouse one time, this guy was a cop, and he would go to San Francisco and get a spanking about once a month, and his wife would watch. He didn't want it in his relationship.
And so his wife would go and watch just to make sure.
I don't know why she went.
Maybe she liked it. Maybe she liked watching. At some level.
But she didn't want to do it.
No, she didn't want to do it. She wanted to make sure he was, I don't know, who knows. But there are solutions, I suppose. But how do you find those? It's such an uncomfortable conversation because we're all so afraid of rejection.
Well, I liked what one of the suggestions there's that 22 experts reveal. They say sit down. You go with your partner. It's an exercise that you do, and you sit down and you each separately you write down different things that you want to try. Fantasies that you'd never do, but maybe if the right thing came about, you might go for it, and And then you meet up and you compare notes.
Oh, good Lord. But I'd have to, like, get the Joy of Sex books out. It'd take too long. If you remember, some of us grew up with all 3 Joy of Sex books in their house. And so our theoretical, if the situation was right, things we'd actually theoretically may do is quite wide. Ow.
Yeah, it is.
And others is quite small. Now, at 50 years old, I've had experience, and so some of the things are less likely to do. Or, I'm more experienced. Okay, I know what or how I want to do what I would want to do, I guess, is probably a more accurate
Right.
description. I wouldn't waste time anymore. If, the theoretical things, I wouldn't be wasting time anymore, unlike it did in the younger days where it took so long and everybody never quite got what you want. Next week's show, we talk online dating. That's a whole nother issue. So stick around for next week, not to Thursday. No, is it Thursday we're talking?
Yeah, Thursday.
Come back for Thursday for online dating. That's a whole nother madness we're going to be talking about. But these things are so hard to discuss. And we're sitting here trying to be family friendly and discuss this in a family friendly way. So if it sounds like we're deliberately talking around this thing, we are deliberately talking kind of around it because we're trying to be family friendly. We're trying to have this in a discussion that, if your child is in the car, you don't necessarily have to hold their ears over your hands over their ears in a panic. You have plenty of time to change, your Spotify playlist or whatever we're on. We try to be family friendly here. We don't, not deliberately titillating. But, and where was I going with that? Anyway, I've kind of forgotten where I was going with that. I went on such a tangent, I forgot where I was going. So,
well, you can. Well, the thing with the list is hoping that there's some things that you match up with, and then you can focus on those.
Well, okay, but what if the handful of things that you would theoretically do, you couldn't do with your partner? Maybe you have, on occasion, it's a modern world, we have same-sex issues, or maybe one of you is, both of you are, if you're going to play that way, both of you are kind of the more dominant or the more submissive parts, and so you simply don't match. And, neither one of you is particularly good. Maybe you're both older, neither one of you is particularly good at playing the other role, and the other person wouldn't have a good time because neither one of you is doing really. One of you not doing what you want, so the other person is not really. It doesn't work, right?
Well, if you're a submissive, you're a submissive. You're not a switch. You could try and switch, but that's usually a train wreck.
Yeah. And so that's...
Nobody has a good time, and you file that away to, we're not going to do that again.
Yeah, so you know your roles, and so if both of you can't fit the same role, what do you do? Do you just not engage in that part of your sexuality, or do you find a different solution? I don't know. And I guess this is how you figure it out, right? There's this steps. As it says, both partners should be willing to make effort, and effort is ill-defined.
Well, I didn't see one thing in there about creative writing.
Well, because not everybody's creative writing. And so it's like sitting down. I don't want to sit down there and make a list, Who wants to do that? And so you've got problems.
Well, this is from a counselor.
Yes.
This is people who've gone into counseling and want to work on this. These are the suggestions that they've made. And both partners should be willing to make efforts.
Yeah. Well, anyway. It's just, I just feel like I don't have a proper answer for these questions. And maybe that's kind of the point.
Well, I think what happens a lot of times is negotiation. Just like you negotiate everything else in your relationship.
Yeah, but doesn't it feel weird
Yes.
when it comes to sex? Because you don't want to do, if you do that, I'll do this kind of thing. Well, unless you're into that kind of thing. And what if you don't want to have that? Again, it goes back to the power dynamics issue. And what if you don't want to have that kind of game playing in your relationship because it might bleed outside?
Well, we're talking about different things that might work for different people.
Yeah. It's just such a confusing world. And as we posted a link to a Psychology Today article, and some psychologists think this whole sexual incompatibility thing is a myth. That it's a myth that we're actually not really sexually incompatible. Well, to a point. That most of us are just deficient at communication skills, deficient at... I dislike the term negotiation. There's got to be a different way to have to describe that in a functional relationship. Because it's one thing to kind of negotiate your way who does the dishes, and do you really want to treat your sex life the same way you do the dishes and take out the trash and vacuum the floor and do the laundry? Really?
It might work for some people.
It's just... Maybe I can get it if you're a busy family and you're young and you've got kids to raise, but as new empty nesters, it just doesn't that feel kind of strange? Just from a personal experience, and this is just me emoting my own self. Right?
Well, to me,
this is not me even being show host. This is me being me.
Well, personally.
And I know we talk about the show. We're not going to really dive into our personal things.
It would take away the romance and the spontaneity and the magic for me.
Yeah. Well, but I don't know, at 50, 60 years old, how much magic is there?
Every day, baby.
Yeah, but I have that low enthusiasm thing, so maybe it's just me. Personality trait test, it's a thing. I don't get overly excited over much. It's just a personality trait.
I'm a girl. I live for romance.
Oh God, this is true. You have crying movies nonstop. This is really true.
Every night.
She loves her crying movies. It's just... So, what are we going to leave our viewers with today? We sit here, we've talked about, the differences in sexuality and how do we talk about them, and yet I don't actually think we've gotten very far. I mean, there's some resources for you to talk to, and ultimately it comes down with trying to find a way to get past your fears and have open communications with your partner. And, that's something all of us can get better at, right? You and me included.
We're not perfect.
Far from it. It's hardly... And what is perfect, right? Define perfect. Jesus Christ. I don't even think we can define perfect. But, so, what does that leave us? Where does that leave us? Where does that leave our listeners? Where does that leave humanity? I think it's what we started with, ultimately, is if two people have found happiness, found a way to... or more people have found happiness and found a way to do it. It's really none of our business. And if they screw up their lives doing it, well, we all screw up our lives doing all kinds of other things, and we don't overly get judged for that. You don't have to have an interesting sex life to screw up your life. We've all done that many, many ways. And so it's not be so judgmental. And then maybe some of these people who sexual drive is out of, say, the lanes of normality can have an easier life. Because isn't that what we all want? To have a better life, to spread love in all its forms and non-judgmental. You don't have to agree with it. You just don't have to engage with it. But you don't have to judge the person sitting next to you because of what they do behind closed doors. Because it's none of your business. And unless you like that kind of thing.
That's what Penthouse is for.
Penthouse doesn't even exist anymore. And you know those letters were actual real letters, right?
They don't?
No.
They don't have Penthouse anymore?
We have whatever search engine you particularly use. What do you need Penthouse for?
Because they always started out the same way. I never thought I would be writing to you. I never thought this would happen to me.
Yeah.
Here's what happened.
You
You
want to get that today? You go to your search engine, in the search bar, you put in my personal kink stories, enter, and you'll come up with all kinds of options to go read to your heart's content. You can write fan fiction about all kinds of stuff you have no idea that you even want to read. There's stuff on there that you can make your eyes bleed. Of course, there's stuff that's poorly written, there's stuff that's well written, but hey, all the world is stage. And now we have the internet, so you can see all the world's stage.
Wonders of the internet. Yes.
Yeah. So all the world is stage, and the internet is nothing but a big, huge stage for everybody. So, enjoy it as you can. Enjoy your life. Enjoy your evening. Thanks for coming with us. And we want to thank you. Me and Lubby want to, oh, wait, I can't find my button over there, so I've ruined my exit. All right, we want to thank you for joining us. Please remember to love everybody.
Good night.